and welcome back to the Ghoul Guides Association, a not-so-secret society where we talk about the Gothic and all things pop culture and history across the centuries. We, of course, are your Ghoul Guides. I am Lauren.
And I'm Mary.
And today we are going to be talking about one of the secret societies that has become, I would say, like, the secret society, which is hilarious when I tell you how it started.
Or is it the worst secret society? Like, I feel like everyone knows about this secret society.
Everyone does know about the secret society, but they don't. This is the thing. What this secret society actually is, how it started, what it stood for, and what people think this secret society is, if you believe the conspiracy theorists, are two very different things, which is why I thought that this would be a good episode to do. So if you listened to our last episode all about our pal Nicholas Flamel, who may or may not still be out there, we talked about secret societies a little bit there, and the fact that if we know that you're a secret society, then you're pretty shit because, well, secret is in the name.
And I for one, I'm not going to confirm or deny whether Nicholas Flamel has been in touch with us or not.
Yeah.
So, you know.
It will remain a mystery. Shout out Nick.
Yeah, also just on an unrelated note, we've got a new follower, Nick, just
thanks for
shout out. Say hi to your wife for us.
Thanks for gifting us unlimited riches on our Ko-fi. We're only carrying on with this as an illusion that nothing's changed.
But yeah, anyway, so secret societies sounds great,
quote unquote.
Where do I sign up?
Well, I mean, Ghoul Guide Association, I feel like we've already semi-made this into a not so secret society. We already have many of the trappings, to be fair, because a secret society essentially is, by definition, an order or a movement in which membership is some kind of secret or by invitation only. You cannot open apply. There's no, board up that says, hey, we meet here every 6 p.m. on a Friday. And the secret in secret society kind of comes a little bit more from the idea of secret, like secret religions. So secret religions, going back to, or cult religions or secret cults, kind of goes back to Greek and Roman eras where like a specific god or goddess would be worshipped. So, you don't have a mainstream religion in, ancient Greece in the same way perhaps as you do if you think of something like an ordered religion like Islam or Christianity. But you would have sects and you would have, one particular group of people, and they specifically worship Aphrodite, or they specifically worship Mithras is probably one of the most famous ones. That was a secret religion. People knew that it was happening. It wasn't necessarily like, hush, hush, you can't tell everybody that we worship Mithras. But it wasn't something that, like, you wore a badge and you told everybody about it and you had an open call. You couldn't it's not like a church where you could just walk in on a Sunday and join a service. So secret societies kind of vary on what we mean by secret. And the term secret obviously has become slightly something different over the centuries. So some secret societies were thinking more secret in the ancient way, but some secret societies genuinely were supposed to be a secret. And this secret society that we're talking about is the Illuminati.
Amazing. Like we said, the best and the worst secret society.
Exactly.
So if you haven't heard of it, then where have you been?
Where have you been? So the Illuminati is the secret society that everybody loves to talk about. It will only take you a few recommended video clicks on YouTube to discover somebody who is talking about the Illuminati and something called the New World Order. That's not what this episode is about, because that Illuminati doesn't exist. Don't come for me, QAnon, because I know QAnon is definitely listening to this podcast. But that's actually not what the Illuminati is. Do you know, Mary, when the Illuminati began?
I don't know. Is it quite a recent thing? I feel like it should be a recent thing.
So,
19th century?
The Illuminati 18th, were formed
20th century?
In 1776 in Bavaria, which we would now consider to be Germany. So this is not the first time the idea of Illuminati has been used. We are not talking about Alumbrado, which is a 16th century, 17th century movement that comes out of Spain, which is all about religious perfection and light and illumination. So kind of like a Catholic offshoot to a certain extent, that was all about this idea of religious perfection. You probably know this. Perfection and perfectionism has a slightly different meaning in a religious, particularly Christian concept. And it's all about basically being closer to God and being more godly and kind of transcending human boundaries and embracing light. And that's what this Alumbrado movement was all about. And they were kind of taking that from a much, much earlier, probably kind of 1st, 2nd century Greek movement, also called the Illuminati. Well, translates as Illuminati. That's, not, I don't think that's the Greek, it's probably the Latin. I did not study classics. I do not know. I went to a public school.
But it makes sense, doesn't it? Because like Illuminati, you think about like being illumined or being illuminated, and in terms of like having from a specific kind of divine knowledge context, having that being opened up to you, and you transcending, that makes sense, because the kind of the divine secrets or divine knowledge or just the divine in and of itself, whether that is God or just a kind of spiritual thing, is illuminated to you. So
actually I'm really glad that you mentioned divine secrets. Do you want to just touch a little bit on what that idea of the divine secret is, or secret divine knowledge?
Well, from a Kabbalistic perspective, or a perspective within alchemy, which we have touched on before, it is the idea of specifically creation, but the idea of the divine within that context, a kind of God being having the secret knowledge of the universe, and that being able to be known to a certain group of people who have cracked the mysteries, or who have, done the trials, or who have studied hard enough and have that kind of knowledge revealed. The reason why it's specifically to do with creation is because creation is about life. So it is what is the secrets of life? How do you make life, or how do you prolong life? So you mentioned Nicholas Flamel. He cracked the divine mysteries because he studied enough or decoded the right text in the right way, and was able to find the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone and therefore immortality. So it's all connected to that idea of creation, obviously God or the divine being, or any, however you're reading that kind of creator or creators, or essence being, assuming there is some kind of creation to the world, and then also creation, like an act of creation that made humans and all of the natural world. Yeah,
exactly. So like, we know this because Nicholas Flamel hit us up this weekend for coffee, and he was like, hey guys, this is how I correct the code. But yeah, so this idea of the divine secret, divine knowledge, becomes less kind of like slightly woo-woo mysticism, superstition, and more a philosophical practice when we get what? The Enlightenment. So you've definitely heard of us talkers. You have definitely heard us talk about the Enlightenment before. But the Enlightenment is a late 16th, early 17th, very much strong 18th century movement, technically most scholars would say it's like starts in the kind of late 17th century and runs into the 18th century, but there is some argument to say that some of that philosophy actually starts in the 1500s. So I'm just covering all bases so nobody gets mad at me. But the Enlightenment really picks up in the early 18th century, and it's a movement that says, through the study of religion, through the study of natural science, we can become enlightened, we can know ourselves better, and through that we can not only become closer to God, but we can become, better. We can do more, we can have better lives, we can live better lives on earth, and then also have better existences in the kingdom of heaven afterwards. So the Enlightenment is this kind of 18th century blend of Christianity and science, and everybody loved it. It was all kind of like no superstition, no nonsense. We're going to start looking inwards. We're going to think about self creation. This is where ideas like the sublime come from. Everybody loved it, apart from the lots of people that didn't like the Romantics. That was later.
Not everyone liked it.
A lot of people didn't like it.
and there's also a kind of an elite-centric focus of the Enlightenment, and
yes.
This idea that, oh look, here are all of these mostly white European men who are so enlightened, and all of these other kinds of countries just are so unenlightened. Yeah. It does have a kind kind of it's inherently it's a superiority complex, I guess. Yeah, from
it was a philosophy that was used to justify empire. Which is an important context when we think about why does it go hand in hand with the idea of secret societies, because secrets and illumination and enlightenment don't seem to go together, but there was this superiority to it. And despite the fact that some people could not possibly be enlightened because they were not allowed an education, there was this idea that some people were naturally more enlightened than others. So on the 1st of May 1776, a guy named Adam Weishaupt founds the Illuminati, all based on the principles of enlightenment. And their core tenets were anti-superstition, obscuration. Basically, they didn't like it when people obscured things. They wanted transparency.
Obscurationism?
I think it's obscurationism.
Yeah.
Anti-religious power, which is interesting because if we think about the one other secret society that we've talked about that did not really take itself that seriously, these did. The Hellfire Club, they were also very anti-religion. They were the YOLO secret society. And the final thing is anti-abuse of state power. So the original Illuminati, on paper, looked like a group I would join. I probably wouldn't be invited because I'm a woman and wasn't from a wealthy background. But maybe.
Are you saying that women can't be enlightened or illumined?
Illumined. I'm an illumined woman. I think they can, but I don't think Adam Weishaupt and his friends in 1776 did.
I'll just say this now. Nothing sounds more boring to me than just a group of, a group that is exclusively men.
Mate, just you wait until I tell you about these people. They would have been so much not fun. They would have been incredible fun in terms of being an outsider, but honestly, they do not sound like they knew how to have a good time. Seriously. But why did Weishaupt feel the need to make this secret society? Well,
can I also just make it? Sorry, this is going to be a very flippant joke, but why do people, especially men, find the need to start a podcast? Sorry. Anyway, carry on.
Because I saw Barbie this weekend, and all I want to do is make Ken jokes.
I haven't seen it yet, but please do.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So good. Men just need to embrace their energy and acknowledge that the patriarchy is boring because it's not about horses in the way that it should be.
I think more people need to talk about the fact that yes, the patriarchy is harmful and damaging, and at the same time, it's also very boring.
So boring. Yeah. So, talking of patriarchies, Bavaria at this time is ruled by a monarchy. Like many of the monarchies, in particularly Germany, these were small interconnected monarchies, kind of often descended from the Holy Roman Empire. At this point, we still have a Holy Roman Emperor. So you have a lot of dukedoms, you have a lot of electors, you have a lot of like prince elector, so these are kind of like small monarchies. The monarchy in Bavaria, super fucked up. Like, Bavaria was not having a good time. So like, I'm not going to get into 18th century Bavarian politics.
Oh, but Lauren, I was so looking forward to that.
But I just want to remind you of the date, 1776. The American Revolution starts in 1775. The French Revolution is going to start like in 10 years. So we have a period where we've got a lot of questioning, we've just had the 7 Years' War, lots of fighting across the continent, lots of countries that, including Britain,
lots of like bubbling social unrest.
Yes, lots of bubbling social unrest, and Bavaria was no exception. So, who were the Illuminati? They were a quite small, probably. It's unclear how many members they actually had, but they probably were quite small, at least to begin with. And yeah, basically this guy, Adam Weishaupt, was like, Bavaria's fucked up, the monarchy is fucked up, we're not like ascribing to Enlightenment principles, we're not just not having a good time, so we're going to form the secret society, and in the secret society we're going to bring together all of these brilliant minds, and these brilliant minds are going to come together and talk about how we could be better. Their reasons for establishing this secret society, I think, are quite noble. I respect them. Their methodology, however, just not good. Pretentious, inherently flawed, like many things born out of patriarchy. All I can say is if they'd have rocked up to me and been like, here's our proposal, I'd have been like, this is terrible. How is this going to be sustained?
It just makes me think about the whole sorry, this is going to be a very UK specific kind of context, but like during the pandemic, where our government had the brilliant scheme of Eat Out to Help Out, which on the face of it, okay, we want to help businesses that are losing money, good, and also maybe we want to help people get out. Although, again, pandemic, I'm questioning that a little bit.
Herd immunity, Mary.
Yeah, but like the way that it happened in the midst of a global pandemic, maybe don't encourage people to go and socialize together when you're in the middle of a peak. And we do know now that scheme led to quite a big spike. Yep. But also just in terms of the marketing, get some women on your team.
Oh my God.
Get some women on your team. And I'm so disappointed that this doesn't come up at every single PMQs, because seriously, the person who is our current Prime Minister had a scheme called Eat Out to Help Out, and nobody told him that was a bad idea.
Nobody said to him, Rishi, you have clearly never given head. Because
just like
who this just shows that Tories are not givers, because he sat in that room and was like, yes, that's a great name for a national campaign.
And it's, I feel this is a very, very specific, it's constantly in my head though, because it's just so stupid. But it's that idea of like the intentions are good.
Yes.
but the methodology and maybe the execution they just missed the mark.
Yeah, they missed the mark. They missed it big. So what was the Illuminati? So unlike the Hellfire Club, that were a brotherhood essentially designed to emulate and mock religious orders, that was devoted to a sort of camp excess, and used all of these elements of things like ritual, things like monastic orders, religious orders, to basically have a good time and fuck around in the woods. The Illuminati took itself very seriously, or at least Weishaupt took himself very seriously. So they basically stole everything from the Freemasons. Because, again, another secret society that's not that secret. So Weishaupt was like, I want to be a Freemason. And he went and checked out the Freemasons, and then he was like, okay, what if I did it differently, but also I poached a bunch of your members and I stole all your shit? And the Freemasons were like, what the fuck, man? Like, this was our super secret clubhouse and our super secret symbology, and now you've taken it. So, for example, one of the most popular symbols associated with Illuminati is the pyramid or the triangle with the eye in the center. Has a couple of different names depending on who's talking about it. You will see it on money. You will see it on you'll see it in a lot of banks and a lot of kind of state buildings, because it's meant to be not so much the all-seeing eye, but the an eye that sees things. It's about knowing and about seeing things as they are. That is not the Freemasons didn't invent it. They were just one of the first people to take it and be like, this is ours now. And Weishaupt was like, but what if it's mine? And they were like, oh my God, Mom, he's copying me. But he did it anyway. So yeah, he basically robbed a bunch of stuff from the Freemasons.
Do you know what I'm getting like Musk vibes? Like like, oh, this is cool. I want it and I'm just gonna take it.
Yeah. You know what? The more I tell you the story, the more that might ring true.
Who knows if the social media Twitter battle was happening the 17th century, 18th century, then maybe instead of a stupid X, we'd have a triangle with an eye as the Twitter logo.
Okay, well, do you want to know what the original name was for the Illuminati?
Was it X?
It was, okay, I'm going to mess this up so badly. The Bund der Perfectibilisten, which translates to the Covenant of I think it's perfectibilism, because perfectibilism, I think, is a thing. So they were the Covenant of Perfectibilism. That was the name.
Yeah, that's lame.
Sorry. Can you imagine now? You watch, it's midnight, you're watching YouTube, and some guy is like, Hillary Clinton glitched, and this is a sign that the Covenant of Perfectibilism are running things. Just doesn't have the same ring to it, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so that's what he called them at first, and he made all of his members use pseudonyms. And all of those pseudonyms were taken from mythology, primarily Greek and Roman, because of course it's always Greek and Roman. I mean, I know this is Europe, but come on, guys. Germany.
North mythology is right there, although actually saying that now the people that are approaching North mythology are also...
That's a whole different problem of white nationalism. So they used funnily enough, the Owl of Minerva as their symbol. I recently found out that owls are really fucking stupid, and it just brings me so much joy.
Not shocked by this.
So apparently, to be able to swivel their heads round, they've evolved to have no brain.
Again, can I just say you are describing a living being that also reminds me of Musk.
Oh, that's mean to owls. I still love owls. They're so cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason they have such big eyes and they can swivel their heads is because they've basically got no brains. Which, when you think about the fact that we use them as the symbol of knowledge and wisdom, is really, really funny. So I was mad that they appropriated a woman, a goddess's symbol, but it's quite funny when you think about the fact that owls are actually really stupid. So yeah, they use the Owl of Minerva, and they're all about knowledge. They're all about the preservation of knowledge, the discovery of knowledge, and kind of the transparency of knowledge, which, if you're a secret society, seems counterintuitive. Like, you're giving everybody code names and you're like, knowledge. But you're basically like, knowledge for us. Nobody else gets the knowledge. Hoarding my knowledge like a little knowledge dragon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. I think again, to use Twitter as an example, it's the idea of like, I'm such a proponent of free speech, like free speech, yay, like isn't we should we should have all the free speech, and then when it comes down to it, actually what it is that I just wanted to be able to police your speech. I wanted to be able to control and potentially restrict what you're saying. I don't want you to say bad things about me, but I want to be able to say whatever I want. And I think maybe it's that whole kind of like, knowledge for everyone, but actually we're going to control what knowledge is
like
out there.
The men on Hinge who say that they want someone who doesn't take themselves too seriously. And I've realised what that actually means is they don't want to be called out for their bullshit. It's that kind of like one rule for me and one rule for everybody else. So, okay, so overall, this is an order founded on Enlightenment concepts. They are anti-superstition, they are anti-obfuscation, anti-religious power. They are not anti-religion, they are anti-religious power. And anti-abuse of state power. And this is because, again, you've got a monarchy that is abusing its state power. They don't necessarily have any good ideas as to what to do about that. And they never really get there because these messy bitches had so much drama. So much drama. Like,
I'm shocked.
Messy, messy, messy bitches. You're shocked to hear this. So, okay, who was Weishaupt? Like, let's kind of like, now we've said, this is Illuminati, this is who they are.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the New World Order. I will mention at the end, but I was originally going to be like, here's the history and the evolution of the Illuminati. And then I started doing the research and was like, fuck that, this episode will be 3 hours long. We'll do another one another time. Also, I don't have the energy right now for New World Order bullshit when people like Musk are, changing Twitter to X, which he doesn't even have fucking copyright for. But that, again, that's a rant for another time. Okay, so. Johann Adam Weishaupt, or Adam Weishaupt, was born in 1748, died in 1830, so establishes the Illuminati in 1776. He was formerly a Jesuit professor of canon. Not canons, unfortunately. That would be fun. Canon law. So basically,
I think that's fun. We have different definitions of fun.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was like, oh, canon. Oh no, canon with one N. So canon with one N is, of course, the religious canon, and canon law is religious law.
Yeah.
So he was a professor at Ingolstadt, which at the time was one of the major European universities, particularly for kind of religious enlightenment.
And if you wanted to know how to, create a human out of dead body parts.
Yeah, exactly. That's where old Frankie baby went. And yeah, he was a professor until the suppression of the Society of Jesus. So when I was doing the research for this, I was like, oh shit, what the hell is the Society of Jesus? I don't know what a Jesuit is. I started reading and then I was like, I don't know what this is. And then I remembered that my co-host on this podcast is a religious scholar, and I thought, fuck this, I'm not going to do any research. I'm just going to ask Mary.
well, you know, there are lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different kind of denominations of Christianity. So it is easy to get confused or, you know, a little bit befuddled. I often do at sometimes as to which, you know, which ones are. But basically, Jesuits, as I know, they're basically like Catholics, but a little bit different and maybe a little bit more into like mystic stuff. And yeah, it's just a kind of specific Catholic order. They're still kind of associated with the Catholic Church, but they also are their separate thing, and they just like being all mystical, I guess, or being a bit more mystical.
Yeah, when I was trying to figure out why they were suppressed, I basically think it was just like a threat to papal power. And obviously at this point in time, not only papal power, but the Holy Roman Emperor, blah, 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 blah. There was a lot of suppressing going on at this point of time, which is why, I mean, God, 1776, people are literally moving to the US at this point in time because of all the religious suppression happening. So poor guy gets suppressed, and we all know what happens when men feel suppressed. They get big dreams. So yeah,
Jordan Peterson is what happens.
Yes, it is. Man cannot live on red wine and steak alone. Eat a fucking vegetable, my dude. Okay. So yeah, Weishaupt had big dreams. He had been a Jesuit professor, particularly professor of canon law. He was an educated guy. And he, after the suppression of the Society of Jesus, really took issue with the abuses of power, abuses of religious power, and, you know, saw the possibility for a Europe that could be less corrupt, more diplomatic. Of course, this is not the first time this would happen, would be the last time. Bavaria and the German states in general, this was actually quite a popular thing. This wasn't new, like, hello, Martin Luther. But he founds this order. He's got big dreams. Unfortunately, it was never, ever going to be what he wanted it to be. And that's partially because he had some really fucking weird ideas about how this should happen. And I think this is probably partially because he was already in a weird Catholic sect that had some, you know, slightly offbeat ideas about how this type of enlightenment could be reached. And one of those was about, I don't know how to term it, basically about surveillance. So the idea that by being constantly surveyed by one another, as a group, you're always keeping each other under surveillance, you're not going to sin.
So now we're getting into Scientology territory.
Yes.
Yeah, where you have, what are they called? Where, you know, you hold those sticks and there's like a kind of dial thing, and you have to go in with, it's called counselling, I think, but it's basically like, you know, you're
auditing. They call it auditing, don't
auditing, they? Yeah, and you have to confess everything to this
everything
person,
bad you've ever done.
Also, you need to be on the lookout for every other Scientologist to see if they're doing anything.
Yeah, are they doing anything bad?
That a suppressive person would be doing.
Exactly.
So yeah, cool. Yeah.
So this order, the Illuminati, is all based on discipline, rationalism, and surveillance. And again, there's some idea that, so like discipline, being disciplined, following a discipline, you know, having a certain code to live by, rationalism. You know, rationalism is something that a lot of us can get behind, but it's kind of like when you read about Ayn Rand for the first time and you read about objectivism for the first time and you go, oh yeah, actually that makes sense. But then you realize that it's not flexible, it doesn't work, it permits fucking late stage capitalism and, you know, all of this bullshit. So again, the type of rationalism that these people were following was quite extreme. We're not talking about not to say that we're not talking about British rationalism, which was kind of a little bit more flexible, a little bit more acknowledging, you know, people like Locke and Hume that were kind of like, oh, well, humans work like this. And if we are educated and if we aren't superstitious, then maybe we can, you know, be better. This was like rationalism without acknowledging the human condition.
Well, isn't that the thing that I think this is why there's a lot of tension between like STEM subjects and like arts and humanities subjects?
Yeah,
because
100%.
how are you defining rationality and how are you defining objectivity? Because on a simple level, 2 + 2 = 4. Nobody's gonna like say that it doesn't, but there's lots of things, especially when you get to stuff like AI, and the way that things are programmed, that do actually, you know, that these programs and the code or the way that data is collected, that it might seem rational, but it's actually influenced by the people behind it, the biases, which is why there's lots of like racism in stuff like facial profiling, because the people that made it are white and they've made it to work with white people, but it doesn't work with other groups of people. And it's the same with like rationality, like who is actually saying what is rational? And I think a lot of people think that there is a definitive like rationality and objectivity. And I think that actually is quite a small sliver of our existence, and there's a lot more like gray area and human bias in things than we might recognize.
Well, it's like, you know, that saying of like good rationality is knowing that a ton of feathers and a ton of iron weigh the same but are not the same thing, and you couldn't fit them both in the same space. Like necessarily, because they are two completely different things. The physicality of them is different, but a ton of feathers weighs the same as a ton of iron. But one will be much more than the other. Like they're not equitable, even though they are technically equal. So you've got rationalism, discipline, and surveillance. Honestly, it's only because these were messy fucking bitches this didn't go full cult, because that is like
It's a recipe for a cult.
It's a cult recipe there and then. And, you know, they poached this stuff from the Masons. They poached a lot of things from the Masons. The Masons, again, we'll do another episode on the Masons because it's an old order. It has a lot of offshoots. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I find it fascinating, but they steal a lot of shit from the Masons. So this isn't even new. This isn't even original. He just basically went to a Masonic temple and went, I like this, but I would like it in blue. And then was like, I made this up. This is original.
Again, I'm really sorry, but like the Musk analogy just writes itself, you know, like, ooh, electric cars. I like this. But also like I want it. And also like I'm gonna make them like death machines. Basically. So how, you know, was this ever a big thing? Masonic temples, obviously, all across the world, at this point, all across Europe, quite a big order. The Illuminati definitely inflated their own numbers and their own importance. And whilst I did joke about the fact that they weren't that secret of a society, they were a secret society. So it's not like you could pop your head in and be like, oh, there's only 5 people in there. So it's hard to tell, and because of something that happens later, whether or not this was actually big. But it seems like there was at least 3 or 4 chapters that sprang up, still mostly in the Germanic states. But across Europe. And Goethe may have been a member. We're actually not sure. He's often listed as having been a member, but a lot of scholars are like, that is a lot of speculation. And Weishaupt probably wanted him to be a member and maybe like tried to get him to come along, but whether or not he actually was a member of the Illuminati is unclear. I mean, I read his autobiography and he doesn't mention it in there, but I guess you can take that either way, really. So
that is such a factual text. So Weishaupt wanted a secular, non-divine structure. And he wanted it to be knowledge-based. But actually, what he wanted was not a secret society. He wanted a religion. So he actually wanted this to be a secular religion, which, whether or not that was ever going to be possible, I'm not sure, because this guy fucking loved rituals.
To be honest, this just sounds like he just wanted a bunch of friends to do stuff with, and he didn't, why are men so resistant to like friendship groups?
Just talk about your feelings.
I've started this new secret society. Why don't you come join and we get to hang out like a lot.
a lot. So interestingly, he had this like vision for this secular religion that was not about the divine. So this again is quite different from earlier ideas of illumination and being illuminated. This was a purely knowledge-based religion. And part of me was like, I love the idea of a knowledge-based faith. Oh my God, this guy loved rituals. He fucking loved rituals. He was like, oh yeah, we're not superstitious, we're anti-superstitious, but we've got to do rituals. Again, cult. I think he just really did not.
It's just community building.
Yeah. I don't think he was that charming. I think that's why it's never really hit off. But yeah, so they were an anti-establishment ritual-based secret order, which sounds like a contradiction in terms. Because yes, ritual is everywhere and we all have our rituals. And there are certain rituals that, we don't necessarily believe in them, but the symbology of them is important. And there's a religious, not a religious, like a non-religious aspect or a non-spiritual aspect to some of these rituals. But this is 1776. Like, just don't have a ritual. Open a coffee shop, my guy. Like, just do it. Adam Smith's over in England, like, coffee shops are the future of masculinity. And this guy's like, but what if we had rituals? What if we had rituals?
I guess, like, if he were alive today, maybe he'd just be super into, like, D&D.
Yeah, no, don't say that about D&D. He wouldn't be into D&D. This is the thing. He'd be into, like, a really niche indie game system, and like when people say they play D&D, he'd be like, yeah, but D&D is like, it's now like run by a big company and it's part of the capitalist movement, which are all things that are true. But he'd be like, you should come and join this one, and then you'd go and play with him and you'd have a really terrible time because this like game system he's developed would just actually not be any fun whatsoever because it would be so ridiculous. That would be him. He's that guy. So how did we get from this weird order where they've all got code names and they surveil each other? They were obsessed with surveilling each other. And this is why they got so fucking messy, because they're all falling out with each other. There's this whole drama that happens between Weishaupt and the other leaders of like the other chapters I am not going to go into because it's just petty bitches being petty bitches. Like, oh, well, I saw you doing this and you did this, because part of this idea that was that to reach this like non-divine illuminated state was not only to follow discipline and be rational, but to also be like constantly snitching on each other. And they kept records on each other. Like,
I cannot tell you how similar this sounds to Scientology.
I know.
And I'm sure lots of other cults, but like that is the one that is just like, springing out to me.
And I think, full confession, I tried to do some research on perfectionism. And I was like, this is outside of my wheelhouse. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a religious scholar. I'm not going to dig into this because I think I won't be able to do it justice. But I think the surveillance thing is part of this idea that, like this is a really popular idea at the time. Humans are inherently bad or have inherently bad things about them. And to resist that badness or to bypass that badness, we have to hold each other accountable, but taken to an absolute extreme. And this is the fate of so many secret orders. They were messy bitches. They didn't get really anything done. I don't think they actually had any, like, they didn't do anything. They didn't produce anything. You know, like, I don't think they actually had that much power or influence. But in 1785, so less than 10 years after the order was founded, the Duke of Bavaria said, you know what? Fuck all of you. Absolutely not. And he banned secret societies.
Oh, that's the worst thing to do. Just ignore it and it will go away. But if you ban it, then now you're tapping into, like, you know, I guess what was like the 18th century version of cancel culture.
Yes. So basically what happens, and this is why the Illuminati exists as the idea it does today. So he bans secret societies. That includes the Masons, and it includes the Illuminati and other smaller orders like the Illuminati. Because again, the Illuminati is kind of not dissimilar to the Hellfire Club, where it's difficult to separate fact from fiction, and the way that it's snowballed, like, through pop culture. But yeah, they have all this messy drama. They weren't really that much of a threat. But the Duke of Bavaria is like, there are these orders of people out there and they don't like me and they don't like how I run things. And, you know, if they were to ever get their shit together, one of their goals is to bring me down because they are against the abuse of power and against the abuse of religious power or religious power in general. So he shuts that shit down. And they basically fall apart. They don't actually ever recover from that. Like, some secret societies obviously either moved or they fled or they continued to meet, but with a lot more secrecy than before. The Illuminati, they basically just fell apart. Like,
or did they?
Well, this is the thing. Why does this weird bunch of dudes with code names like Philo and weird rituals that are, like, you know, yes, anti-powers that be, but ultimately they're just a bunch of guys, like, snitching on each other and arguing about who is the most rational and who's the best, who is the most illuminated. They didn't really ever actually do anything that threatening and challenging to the establishment. And they certainly didn't have that many, like, famous members. Yes, there's this idea that Goethe was a member, but, like, Weishaupt wasn't, he's not a big player. So why do we think of the Illuminati the way that we think of them? So before I explain this, Mary, what do you think the modern idea of the Illuminati is? Like, why are people so obsessed with the Illuminati, in your opinion?
I think some people are just really, really gullible. And I think the modern kind of perspective of Illuminati intersects in people's obsession with aliens.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that obviously people in Egypt weren't able to build those pyramids. It must have been those aliens.
Yeah. There's a laptop on one of the freezers.
Yeah, which is very racist. And also, it kind of overlaps with one of the most popular conspiracy theories of probably, you know, the entire, like, you know, time that humans have been on Earth, which is just that there is a secret group of people who are controlling and pulling the strings of the people in power, and it's all about, you know, the influence of this secret group.
Yes.
Who are either the government or controlling the government, and also all aspects of, like, political life. So I think it's just that kind of narrative, especially given that they had that kind of those ties to, but also were a little bit like, anti these things. Like, it's this idea that maybe it overlaps with that. There must be some secret conspiracy behind the powerful elites, which, as a conspiracy theory often lends itself to or draws on like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. But yeah, that would be my reason as to why the Illuminati. It's people also like symbols, and that whole like triangle pyramid with the eye, it's quite a eye-catching symbol.
And it does pop up a lot of places. Like, I won't deny that. It's everywhere, but not for the reason.
And also, like, what's that? Is it the peridolia effect? Sorry, I am really like not hitting that pronunciation. But basically the idea
I also don't know how to say it.
Humans are programmed to see patterns in things. So if you start noticing a bunch of triangles or pyramids with eyes in lots of different seemingly disparate places, then you might think these have to be connected. There has to be a pattern because it can't be random. And the thing is that yes, these things can be random. But if you go back to like, we used to be apes, and from an evolutionary perspective, if you hear something, if you see something, and it might be something dangerous, you are more likely to survive if you think, right, that's something bad, so I'm going to go and hide, I'm going to run. So we are programmed to see patterns, even when there aren't patterns, because it from an evolutionary perspective, it might help us to survive. But what that means is that a lot of random patterns, we see meaning in them where there is none. And I think that this is, in a very circuitous way, that is why I would say the Illuminati as a concept has come back into vogue and has stuck around.
Yes. So yeah, that's certainly part of it. And I think there's that thing of like, in an increasingly secular world, we as humans have this natural evolutionary thing where we imagine that everything is top down. We automatically look for hierarchies. That's why a lot of religions are based on there's a God in the sky. So the idea that there's this like, network of people. Does this sound like this group of chuckle fucks from Bavaria?
No.
Absolutely not. So why does this happen? Guess what? It's the French Revolution, baby!
Oh.
I always find a way to bring it back round. But genuinely, this is why the Illuminati becomes this cultural concept. Because in the French Revolution, and particularly once the Revolutionary Wars broke out, so 1797, 1798 in particular, so that's like a couple years after Britain in particular entered the French Revolutionary Wars. So along with the end of the world, which is, I know, something that we've talked about before, everybody thought that, well, I say everybody, a significant number of people thought that the revolution meant the world was ending. And this was, this was the second coming, this was Revelations, that this meant the world was ending. Secret societies became the boogeyman because the ideas that they had were so closely aligned to the revolutionaries. And a lot of people believed that this could not possibly have come about organically in the way that it did, that somebody had to have been plotting it. Not like France borrowed its army to the American revolutions and people like Robespierre and Lafayette had all these conversations with these revolutionaries. And one of the founding fathers was literally an ambassador during this period and influenced all these revolutionaries. Definitely nothing to do with that or the fact that the monarchy was corrupt and everything else. No, it was definitely secret societies. So in 1797 and 1798, these two really influential, absolutely ridiculous pamphlets get published. One is, I'll make sure I get this right, Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobinism. So we're now, again, this is when we start to link anything about rebelling against a monarchy to this idea of Jacobinism, whereas in fact Jacobinism wasn't rebelling against a monarchy to begin with at all. It was about getting a different monarchy by this guy called Augustine Barrel, and Proofs of a Conspiracy by John Robinson. So he did not hide what that one was about. They theorized that the Illuminati and the Freemasons in particular had plotted the downfall of the European monarchy, were continuing to plot the downfall, and the French Revolution was all an attempt to bring down the European powers and replace it with something new. And essentially, they merged the Freemasons and the Illuminati together, and they give the Illuminati way more power, way more scope than it ever had. Why? Because the Duke of Bavaria fucking cancelled them. It's the exact same thing as what happens when, like, the Catholic Church says, oh, yes, demons are real. You legitimize panic, you legitimize, like, things because he cancelled them, because he saw them as a threat. It gave them this, even though they literally fell apart after that, the Illuminati didn't even exist by the time these texts were being written, but the Freemasons did. And to be fair, I don't want to sound like I'm defending the Freemasons, but the Freemasons, again, are one of those orders that I think did have some good ideas to start with, but we know this is a thing, and this is still a thing today. The Freemasons protect their own. There are people that join the Freemasons, and then it's for, like, businessmen, it's for professionals. They do each other favors. So there's some, you can kind of see how they got there. There's these secret societies. They are anti-monarchy, anti-abuse of power. They kind of align with the revolution. They got some weird symbols going on. They meet in secret, and they're like, yeah, the Illuminati is definitely responsible for the French Revolution. And also, the founding fathers of America were definitely in the Illuminati, because the Eye of Providence is on the dollar bill. And everyone was like, that sounds legit. I believe you. And so the Illuminati, this group of dum-dums who never actually got anything done because they were too busy snitching on each other and infighting and kicking each other out and wresting power away from each other and being like, you were supposed to be my best friend and now you're his best friend, and you were supposed to do this with me and now you're doing this with him, and stole everything from the Freemasons in the first place, become this weird mythological power that supposedly all the most powerful people in the world have come together to, like, control everything. So this conspiracy grows and grows and grows and grows, and it's growing even in the 1800s. You get a lot of panic that, like, the presidential election, I think in 1800, people were like, the Illuminati influenced that election. Yeah, they influenced that election because they wanted this person to be president, and they influenced it. And this starts to take on real meaning. Even authors like Charles Brockden Brown acknowledged this conspiracy theory. Of course, what kind of novels did Charles Brockden Brown write?
Gothic
novels.
Yeah.
So the Illuminati panic, and it's weird because this was just a secret society panic. It was, secret societies are responsible for the French Revolution. Secret societies are dangerous. Secret societies, are manipulating things behind the scenes. I think for some reason, it's just that the Illuminati became, maybe because their name sounded cooler than Freemasons, or maybe because they were newer, they were founded not long after the American Revolution. They become this weird, like, mysterious power that they never ever were. And this panic starts to spread, and over the course of the 19th century, this idea of the Illuminati starts to take hold, and it has a massive influence on American Gothic in particular, starting with authors like Charles Brockden Brown, but then going right through the 19th and into the earlier 20th century, this idea of this secret society, of this elite. And it's weird because actually the original Illuminati are, like, against the corruption of, like, state power. But this idea that, there's this group called the Illuminati and they're pulling the strings in the background. It grows and grows and grows. They become the boogeyman. It influences a lot of American Gothic. Then we get to the new kind of, like, the modern era, and we get this idea of the New World Order, which, again, maybe we'll do a whole other episode in it. But essentially, the New World Order is a conspiracy theory that cultural elites, particularly Hollywood, have some kind of agenda. They're going to destroy everything. They're going to reset. The Great Reset was the term that QAnon used. And they have some nefarious purpose, and maybe they eat children. And that's basically.
I feel like so many conspiracy theories just get like regurgitated and recycled. Like, none of these are original. Like, no one's original. The Illuminati's not original, and QAnon's not original. Everyone's just ripping off of each other, and really, it's all just quite boring.
Yeah, it's really boring.
The actual All I can say though is that, like, I hope that the revisionism that's happened to the Illuminati, which to some extent makes them sound quite cool.
Yeah.
When evidently they were not.
That's the thing.
I hope that it doesn't happen to weirdos and losers like Musk.
Yeah.
Like, you know, these people need to go down in history as being terrible people and terrible businessmen.
And this is the thing, like, Weishaupt is not remembered as some, like, you know, amazing guy. What the Illuminati were and what people think the Illuminati are, and the Gothicized cultural notion of the Illuminati could not be more different. Like, don't get me wrong. If I was to have, like, overheard these guys in their little caves calling each other their stupid little code names, doing their rituals, I'd have been like, oh, these guys are fucking weird. I'm scared of these guys. Mostly because they seem unhinged. But they were so egotistical and so, like, petty that they never actually got anything done. Like, at least the Rosy Cross guys wrote some manuscripts and then maybe were like, oh, these are a joke.
We're here for vibes and a good time.
Exactly. Now, one of the interesting things about the Illuminati, and we will come back to this at some point, but one of the really interesting things is that even though they start in 1776, they start this cultural reimagining of them starts to take them back further and further and further and further. And, you know, again, I joked about Dan Brown last time, but there's people that believe that this dates all the way back to Jesus. And that Knights Templar and the Illuminati are like the same group, and they've been protecting the secrets of God all this time.
My issue with Dan Brown's novels, I don't mind what he writes in his fictional novels, but he does this thing, and it's a very Gothic thing, where he says, you know, he starts his books with the story that you're about to read is all fictional, but it's based on fact and here they are. And, like, I think the Da Vinci Code has, like, I don't know, like a list of 10 things, and it's like most of them, if not all of them, are also not fact.
Yeah.
But because you have that kind of, like, that prologue or that preface that suggests some kind of, here's a distinction, again, that kind of, this is fact and this is fiction, when actually the line between them is more blurred. And that whole framing device is so Gothic, but it irritates me because then you get people believing all of these absolutely nonsense, like, conspiracy theories.
And Dan Brown's fiction has become such a massive part of cultural consciousness that it's kind of, I don't want to say that it's like Paradise Lost because that gives Dan Brown too much credit, but it's the Paradise Lost effect. That's something that has essentially been produced as a work of fiction, because Paradise Lost is still a work of fiction, has become so popular that it's made its way into the canon of cultural consciousness, and people don't realize that it's not canon, and that's not it's not true.
It's Bible fan fiction, but Paradise Lost is just so much better written.
This is why I was, like, hesitating, because I was like, I don't want to say that the Da Vinci Code is on the same level. Like, I'm not a snob at all. Like, I love, I mean, God, a lot of Gothic is quote unquote badly written, but I feel it would be wrong of me to suggest that Paradise Lost and Da Vinci Code are on the same level. But what I mean is, in terms of the way that something seeps into our consciousness, and that people think, oh, every time you see a V or a chalice in a picture, it's the Holy Grail with the womb the whole time.
But hey, you know, if you've made it this far through the episode, and, you know, if there's one thing to take away, it should be just have a look, like, be conscious and aware the next time you see, like, a triangle with an eye in the middle. And yeah, just see who else is under the influence of the Illuminati.
Exactly. So that is the history of the Illuminati. Which, you know, I know sometimes we're like, oh, this is Gothic and this is why. This literally did have an influence on the Gothic. It directly had an influence, particularly on the development of the American Gothic, and on the mythos around the creation of the United States and the way that that has then been imagined through Gothic literature. But yeah, unfortunately, hate to break it to you, the Illuminati is just a bunch of dum-dums in 1700s Bavaria. Jay-Z is not in the Illuminati. There may be lizard people. I mean, who am I to say? But yeah, unfortunately, not the same thing. I would love to know what Adam Weishaupt would think if he could see it now, because yes, the Illuminati is now this world famous idea, but I think he'd be really mad because it's actually so far removed from what he wanted and like what his core tenets were, like, you know, the anti-corruption of power, anti-abuse of power. It was about knowledge and not obscuring things.
Well, do you know what, mate? You should have done a better job.
Yeah.
When starting a cult.
Yeah. I mean, let's just be honest. That's what I'll say. Don't steal from the Freemasons and then do it shit. Like, come on. He was like the Illuminati with a wish.com Freemason.
Well, on that note, this has, as ever, Lauren, been a delight. Thanks, I've enjoyed this very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, you're welcome. And if you guys would like to do more episodes on things like secret societies, or, you know, particularly Gothic inspired cults, or you want us to touch on other weird movements throughout history like perfectionism, let us know. You can there's like a Q&A thing on Spotify, or you can comment on YouTube. I have absolutely no idea, I'm afraid, what the interface looks like on other things, but you can also email us at ghoulguides666 on Gmail, at Gmail, not on gmail.com. And you can find us on Instagram, where you can follow us there, and on the social media platform that shall not be named.
You can still find us on Twitter. I'm happy to name it. You can find us on Twitter. You can tweet us. You can whatever.
Yeah, you can find us there, and of course you can also.
We are the kinds of people who will happily watch the ship go down. So we will be there.
Yeah.
To watch its
destruction.
We
will be laughing as it burns.
Yes.
And you can also, I think you can comment on Ko-fi, and if you would like to support us, you of course don't have to, but if you'd like to support us, you can donate to us on Ko-fi. But in the meantime, please like and subscribe, or follow us wherever you are consuming this show. And in the meantime, stay safe and stay spooky.
Stay safe and stay spooky.